So we can clearly chart the economic failure step by step, and it's amazing. The graphs of indebtedness compared to circulation just parallel the graphs that this model produces from the early 80s. I mean, theoretically, we already knew that the economy was going to fail. It was a question of when, and theoretically also we can say that given data that's accurate, the model can predict within a very accurate, narrow time span when the maximum possible or practical lifespan of a system is. So,
yes, well, in fact, you've actually been quite conservative, haven't you? Because you've only really used the basic amount needed to keep the system functioning. You haven't been extravagant in any way at all. You've only really done the basic maths of what it's going to take to keep it afloat and how it must ultimately fail. I mean, the governments can probably prop it up with a bit of extra spending for a little while, but ultimately it has to fail. It's designed to do exactly that.
We're really in a failure right now. There's no recovering from this situation that we're in, especially as slowly as governments move and as falsely as they act.
Well, yes, they are acting very falsely.
The more money they pump into it, I mean, these politicians know what's going on. They can't be that stupid. They know what's going on. They know who they're serving, and they know the more money they're pumping into it, the bigger the debt becomes, and the more catastrophic the failure becomes. And this is exactly what we've seen in Iceland. I believe Iceland is being used as a template, actually, for how they can do this to the rest of the world. It's a nice, small economy. It's a nice, small amount of people, so they're seeing what they can do there.
Yes, they're rich in natural resources. They're basically going to indebt the citizens of Iceland for losses incurred by Finnish and English bank depositors when Bank Icelandic went under. This is actually not even a financial responsibility of the Icelandic people to repay this debt.
No, but this will give them access to all the resources of Iceland. It'll put every single person in the country in debt, and so the resources of the country are about all they've got to pay that debt with.
Yes, and an important thing to understand about that is the obfuscation of the currency. The Bank of England and the Bank of Finland have already reimbursed their depositors. So they're asking through the governments, which tells you who controls the governments, right there. They're asking through the governments that the governments insist that the Icelandic citizens repay these banks. Okay? Now, how have these banks repaid their depositors who've lost as a result of this Bank of Iceland going under? Well, they simply issued credit or they paid it from their assets, one or the other. And in the latter case, they've taken those assets through the obfuscation of the currency. They don't earn this. What happens, see, all the money in the world actually is promissory notes. In the normal course of a promissory note or lifespan of a promissory note, as long as the note exists, the person who holds it might spend it. They might trade it to someone else. So if I promise to pay you $100,000 for a $100,000 house, so long as you possess this note, then you might spend that $100,000 to anyone who will accept that note, and that's what we're doing when we accept this kind of a currency. The thing is, let's say I paid you $50,000 back. Well, in effect, you only hold a $50,000 note. What does that mean? As I pay off this note, the payments are paid out of circulation. They retire the paid part out of circulation. And this is something that's very important to observe about promissory notes. What's happening in the case of every central banking system of the world? Well, some banker fellows came along and they said, well, you know, you really need us to run your economy. And they twisted some politicians' arms and minds into going along with this scheme. And all it is a scheme to exploit the subject nation. In every case, it's a system of exploitation. It provides us absolutely no service whatsoever. What does a central banking system do? It actually intervenes between the real creditor, you who gave up a $100,000 house for my $100,000 note, and the debtor, me. All right? And it says, no, 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 Mike, you can't issue Max your $100,000 note on your paper. It has to be written on our paper. So this piece of paper might cost them 10 cents, and they issue a $100,000 note in my name on my creditworthiness to you, and have the goal to charge us interest on it besides that. When we pay the principal off to the bank keeps it. It doesn't retire it. It doesn't abide by the natural lifespan of a promissory note. So basically, just in terms of what it's doing in principle, it's laundering the possession of this note into its own possession. It isn't the owner of the notes that it issues. You are. When I issue you a note, you become the owner of that note. So basically, the central banking systems of the world enriching themselves by this obfuscation so much as all the principal of all the debts that will ever be created for all of our production, and basically they're going to force all production to become indebted to them as further collateralization for this monumental indebtedness that's going to be precipitated by interest as we borrow principal and interest back into circulation as an ever greater sum of debt perpetually increase so much as periodic interest on an ever greater sum of debt until we succumb to failure. So it's the interest, though, that multiplies this debt ever further. So for basically just on the surface, you build a $100,000 house, I issue you a $100,000 note for it, and as I pay that off, it would be retired from circulation. Okay? That's natural economy. A central banking system intervenes between us and says, no, 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 no. You have to issue your notes on our paper, which is going to cost us 10 cents to issue $100,000 into circulation. You pay us back, we get to keep the $100,000, plus we're charging interest on it. So instead of paying for one house, you're going to pay for four, okay? And in the process of paying for the four, you're going to borrow all that interest, 3 houses of interest, back into circulation just to maintain the circulation so that you can finish fulfilling the artificial obligation that we've created, okay? So now there's $400,000 of debt where there was $100,000 of debt, and likewise, now we're going to have to reborrow all the interest that we're paying on the $400,000 of debt to continue servicing that debt until the escalating sum of debt causes failure. That's it.
It's such a scam, isn't it?
Yeah. It's unbelievable. It's what got Christ crucified. You know, it's an ancient ruse.
I said that weeks ago, actually, Mike. I said, look, yeah, Christ was doing fine until he overturned the tables of the money changers, and then he was dead within a week as soon as he messed with the bankers.
And that's a very important thing to recognize, because unless you understand this process, which I've just explained, you don't even understand what this expression money changer means. You have no idea what money changer means. It's an ancient ruse which dispossesses the subjects of everything. The few that run the system and collect all this end up collecting all the wealth from everyone. It's a skewed monopoly game of the most evil kind. And, you know, we're at fault because, you know, how stupid can we be? I mean, we think we're borrowing money from banks. Well, how? How are we borrowing? How did the first dollar come into circulation? How is there all this money now? They create it. They got to create it because there wasn't that much money before. So how did they create it? We don't ask this question. We don't demand an answer. We don't demand an accountable answer. We have before us what we deserve for being so inept.
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of people just don't understand how it works. It's one of the most misunderstood and least understood and taken for granted systems on the entire planet. But the money system, the interest-based monetary system, it's the cause of most of the suffering on the planet. And it could be very, very easily rectified.
It's not the cause of all debt. You see, in a natural monetary system, which You know, I had a paper that I published in 1979, Parable of Perfect Economy. Books have been written plagiarizing this story, thinking that it's a actual historic event that happened, but it was not. Ellen Hodgson Brown's interest in the Pennsylvania currency derives from my story. The debt virus by Jacques Jaquerin derives from my story. Well, this story is about the actual lifespan of a promissory note, and the debt of a promissory note is the natural extent that beneficial debt can exist in.